It would not then be possible for anything to get midway between the camera and the Earth.
Central America. South America becomes invisible just off beyond the terminator or inside the shadow.
And now in this wider view, there's also an interior light in the shot. How can that possibly happen? Well, in fact, all that we've just been looking at was televised live from the craft. But the camera was not looking out through the window at all. Had they been filming the real Earth from a position back from the window, it would be difficult to keep the subject well framed, as you can see from this illustration. The Earth in the far distance would be cut off by the window in the foreground when any movement of the camera occurred. We've ringed the edge of the window white for clarity. Remember, it was handheld. And if they had been filming the real Earth when zoomed in, the edge of the window would not be sharp. It would be out of focus like this and spoil the shot, because the focus would have been set at infinity. Far better to have gone right up to the window and filmed from there.
It's floodlight.
Returning to the sequence where we left off, when the lights have been switched on, the other window shade opens and the exposure adjusted, we can see astronaut Mike Collins. The left-hand window we've just been looking at is now overexposed, but as we get closer, we can see that something is indeed clipped in front of the window. Is it that window-size colour transparency of the Earth, with the sunlight glowing white behind it? It looks very much so. Why would they need to be videoing a picture of the Earth?
Maybe a bigger f-stop might help.
Continuing with the shot, we panned around past Armstrong, who is in the centre of frame, across to the right-hand side of the capsule. And here, would you believe, through the right-hand window is what appears to be the real Earth filling the view. From the Apollo 11 command module, the CSM, we're being shown two different views of Earth, but both cannot be correct. Given that the first version is purporting to be over halfway to the Moon, and on closer examination is seen to be a colour transparency, we have to conclude that this image is not a true representation of the CSM's position. However, the time recorder reads out a mission elapsed time of 34 hours and 16 minutes.
34 hours, 16 minutes, and 15 seconds. Roger. Can you see that clearly enough, Charlie?
Where could they be? Well, as the second view of Earth fills the craft's window, we must conclude that they're in the relative safety of low Earth orbit, and not on their way to the Moon at all. That would then explain why they were videoing a picture of the distant Earth. It's worth noting that this star chart, which is obviously clipped to the window, is held there in the same manner as we suggest was the backlit transparency of the Earth we saw earlier.
The president's two star charts that he is using right now as sunshades over the right-hand window, window number 5. Right there, we see the sun shining in through it behind him. And
this sequence, then, together with the jump salute, are our first two examples of whistleblowing fakery and indications to us that something's seriously wrong with the Apollo record.
Dr. David Groves is a physicist in the UK and a specialist in image processing.
I've been involved in image analysis for 25 years now. I did my PhD developing holographic computer techniques for analysing images. My company, Quantic Image Processing, use these image processing techniques to extract three-dimensional information from two-dimensional images used in industry and used in medicine. The NASA pictures that I've analysed contain many inconsistencies, a whole core of which have no rational explanation or excuse.
Not surprisingly, a growing number of intelligent thinking people are beginning to realise that all was not well with Apollo. So why aren't professionals in the aerospace industry speaking out? What could be the reason for such reticence? Well, in fact, some have spoken out. Bill Wood lives in California. He is a highly qualified scientist with degrees in mathematics, physics and chemistry. He's been granted high security clearance for a number of top-secret US government projects. Wood has worked with many major contractors to the United States government, including McDonnell Douglas, and also with engineers employed on the Saturn V, the Apollo launch vehicle. For many years, Bill Wood has harboured suspicions regarding the authenticity of the Apollo record.
I think that a lot of the people that I have had contact with in the aerospace industry want desperately to believe that this actually happened, because it's a source of pride that their profession contributed to an achievement like this. And then, of course, within the United States, we're all very proud that our country made this achievement. So there's a real reluctance to question anything that would destroy this lofty self-image. And particularly for the people who worked on the Apollo program, to many of them this was the most wonderful achievement that they ever produced during their entire life. And they would much rather think of it that way than to think that, like millions of other people, they were fooled into thinking they were working on something that was not genuine.
I think the idea that the Apollo project was faked is demonstrably ridiculous. I think it can be demonstrated that this is the case from a large amount of evidence, both scientific and indeed just common sense.
H.J.P. Arnold is an astronomer and very keen photographer, an expert on space and astrophotography. He was assistant to the managing director of Kodak Limited during the period of Apollo. He's also the author of many books on space photography and exploration.
This is a roll of, as you can see, 70mm film, and this is, of course, I hasten to say it's not the original, which is in the closely guarded and temperature and pressure controlled vaults in Houston, magazine 40 from Apollo 11. So this is the roll of Ektachrome film that was exposed mainly by Neil Armstrong on the lunar surface, and of course it's a historical record, but I do stress that this is a duplicate which was given to me, and I'm very proud to have been given it by the people at the Photographic Technology Division in Houston.
Brian Welch is Acting Director, Media Services at NASA, Washington.
The film was specially produced for NASA by Kodak. It involved the use of thin gels and special emulsions for this film. The idea was that it would have to stand up to a vacuum, it would have to stand up to extremes of heat and cold on the surface of the moon.
But H.J.P. Arnold has a completely different view regarding the film used.
It was Kodak film, and the sensitization of the film was essentially the same as ordinary film at that time. It was Ektachrome X, as it was then called, 64 ASA, or ISO, as we need to say now. ASA is all gone. Or 160, which was then a very fast film, of course, 160 ASA or ISO.
So, it turns out that the film emulsion was perfectly ordinary after all. Then perhaps the camera itself was special. Hasselblad in Sweden was the NASA-appointed manufacturer of a camera capable of functioning on the lunar surface. And Jan Lundberg was the project engineer responsible for building the camera.
Originally, NASA made all the alterations themselves. Then they presented what they had done to us and asked, can you do this? And we said, yes, we can, and we can do it better. So after that, we put up a technical specification, which was approved by NASA, and then all the alterations were made in our factory.
Was the film loaded into a regular camera magazine?
It was a modified standard 70mm back. There were protective plates both on the camera and on the film magazine.
On all the NASA still photographs taken by the Hasselblad lunar surface camera, one should see small crosses spread at intervals over the surface of the image. In the center of the image, there should be a larger crosshair, or reticle as it's called professionally. These reticles were virtually in contact with the film and set in the focal plane of the camera at the time of manufacture by Zeiss. This means they are immovable. Any photograph purporting to be taken on the moon by the named Apollo astronauts using these lunar surface cameras must feature the large reticle at the center of the picture. Not only that, it would be totally impossible for an object to get in front of the reticle on the developed image.
So what exactly are these reticles or crosshairs for? What do they do?
They can measure this distance between the crosses and also determine if the film has curved, because then the crosses will be slightly dislocated.